We're going to be in 2 Corinthians this morning, if you want to go ahead and be turning there. 2 Corinthians. Second Corinthians chapter 4. Excuse me. I'm going to read 17 and 18. It says, "For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal." As we begin to think about this and begin to look at this a little bit, our world is full of troubles. We do our prayer requests first thing in the morning. That's troubles. That's physical problems. That's situations that's going on in families and things of that nature. Everywhere we look, there's troubles. Everywhere we look. We find people that are hurting. We find people that are oppressed, lonely, hungry, lost. We find all kinds of things in this world as we look around, don't we? All kinds of people struggling to get through and to be able just to make it through another day, just to be able to make it through one more moment in time. Sometimes we feel like we can't make it that one more moment. This may be how you feel this morning. It may be that you're feeling this exact way. Seems like everywhere you turn there's trouble. Just get over one thing and something else comes into my life. Sickness or financial problems or whatever it may be. We have those feelings over and over and over in our lives. And we go through like that. Paul was no different. And that's what he's telling us here is he's trying to get us to look beyond those things. But he had troubles in his own life. Had problems as he went through. And 2 Corinthians chapter 11, beginning in verse 24, he tells us some of the problems that he had as he went through life. He says, "Of the Jews, 5 times received I 40 stripes, save one. Thrice was I beaten with rods. Once was I stoned. Thrice I suffered shipwreck. A night and a day I have been in the deep. In journeyings often, in perils of water, in perils of robbers, in perils of my own countrymen, in perils by the heathen, in perils in the city, in perils in the wilderness, in perils in the sea, in perils among false brethren, in weariness and painfulness, in watching often, in hunger and in thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness, besides those things that are without, that's which cometh upon me daily, the care of all the churches." So here he's telling us all the things that he's went through, all the troubles and trials that he had. 5 times he was whipped, the same as Jesus was scourged. He was whipped 5 times in that same manner, 39 stripes. 3 times he was beaten with rods. He was stoned once. Usually when they stone somebody, they stone them to death, but it didn't kill him. Thrice he suffered shipwreck. I believe if I was in one shipwreck out to sea, it would have probably turned me against it. And he says, a night and a day it's spent in the ocean floating around, waiting on somebody to save me, hanging on to a board or something of that nature. And then everywhere he went on land in these journeys, he was in peril. Peril of robbers, peril of his own countrymen, peril of the heathen. In the city I was in peril. In the wilderness I was in peril. Everywhere he went he was in trouble. He had troubles and trials and tribulations everywhere he went. Doesn't seem that you should have to go through all these things, does it? As we look at the world we live and think about those things, it doesn't look like we'd have to struggle and go through all these things in life. We shouldn't have to have sickness. We shouldn't have to deal with death. We shouldn't have to deal with all those things. And yet, Paul tells us that those things are going to come upon us. And not only did he deal with all those things on the outside, he had to deal with things about the church. And a lot of the ones in the church were against him. They didn't believe some of the things he was telling. They didn't take him as one of authority and things of this nature. So he had all kinds of problems as he went through, all kinds of troubles and trials and things that were going on. And the truth is, the devil used every tool in his toolbox, every tool available to him, to try to get Paul to quit. Try to get him to just throw things down and say, it ain't worth it. I'm just going to quit. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm just going to go away and forget about it. He does the same thing to us, doesn't he? He uses every tool in his toolbox to try to discourage us, try to persecute us, tries to cause us trouble. You know, all those different things. In the same chapter here, chapter 4, verse 8 and 9, it says, we are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. Paul here was telling us that he's gone through all the things that we've gone through. He was perplexed, he was troubled, he was persecuted, he was discouraged in his life. All those things that Satan has thrown at him, all those things that Satan uses in his toolbox, he does the same thing to us. He'll give us aches and pains, give us problems in our life, give us trouble. We'll just kind of throw our hands up and say, I'm tired, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to go through those things. But Paul here said that he'd been through all those things, yet not destroyed. Yet not destroyed. Satan had thrown all that stuff at him, and yet God had sustained him through all those things. As a matter of fact, Paul here in the verses that we just read there in verse 17, he says, for our light affliction. Our light affliction. When you think about the things that I just read to you, all the things that Paul went through, the beatings, the shipwrecks, the troubles, the trials, the tribulations that he had, and then he says these are just light afflictions. And I think the reason he wants us to understand that is these things are just temporary. These things kind of are here and then they go away. If they stick with us our whole life, then it's still just temporary. It's not going to follow us to the hereafter. It's just going to be here while we're here. So the affliction, he says, is light. Sometimes it doesn't seem that way to us, does it? When we're having the trials and the troubles and tribulations in life, it doesn't seem like these afflictions are light. When you go to the doctor's office and the doctor says, hey, you got this going on and it's very serious. You know, you need to do something. We sometimes panic and feel the weight of this come upon us. We don't think that's a light affliction. We think that that's something that kind of bears on us. Now, I remember when I was first diagnosed with AFib, I was sitting on the edge of a hospital bed, and the doctor walked in, the cardiologist, and he began to tell me how lucky I was to have him for a doctor, because if I didn't have him, I would probably already be dead. Basically what he told me. And I looked at him and I said, obviously you don't know my God, because I'm not leaving a moment before he tells me it's time. That's what I told him. And he didn't like that I didn't think he was God, and I didn't like that he thought he was. So we didn't get along too well. We didn't get along too well. But the truth is, God's got everything right in the palm of his hands. You know, there's a lot of people in this world that will preach that things are going to be great and wonderful whenever we turn our lives over to God, but that's not what the Bible teaches us. Paul here was a great man of God. He was a great man of God. You know, if we were looking up to people, he would be one of those that we'd put at the top of that list of people we need to look up to and follow and try to live in the same manner that they lived. And yet Paul, look at the afflictions that he had. If he had afflictions, why would I think that I wouldn't? Jesus, when he walked this earth, he is the example that we should follow. And he had afflictions here on this earth, didn't he? Had persecutions and trials and troubles because of what he did, because of who he was and the stand that he was trying to deliver to this world. There's afflictions in this world, and they come in all different manners. They come in all different types. But Paul here says all those things are life. As I said, we don't think that sometimes. But the thing is, they're just for a moment. You know, what is life but a vapor? It appears for just a moment and then it vanishes, doesn't it? Job said, my life is swifter than a weaver's shuttle. You know, those things move back and forth at quite a pace. He also said that his life come forth as a flower and then cut down. When you see a flower and it come up and it bloom, usually it's gone in just a short period of time, isn't it? Doesn't take it long to go away. When we're young, we feel like we're immortal. We can do anything. We can climb any mountain and knock down any tree or whatever we want to do. We feel like everything's in the palm of our hands. And then we turn around twice and life is gone. We're looking back at the path that we led and we're thinking, where did it all go? Where did it all go? Or at least that's the way it was for me. It may not be that way for you, but that's the way it was for me. I turned around twice and I'm looking back and saying, you know, where did the time go? What happened here? What's gone? In Genesis chapter 47, verse 8 and 9, and Pharaoh said unto Jacob, how old art thou? And Jacob said unto Pharaoh, the days of my years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and have not attained unto the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. He is 130 years old, and he says, few and evil have been the days of my years. And it just flew by. And then he says, I'm not near as old as my fathers, and wasn't going to be as old as his fathers. Wasn't going to be as old as those that come before him. It just flew by. 130 years to me seems like an awful long time. We don't ever see anybody live to that age now. Somebody reaches the 100 milestone or 101 or something like that. There's big celebrations, isn't it? We read it in the paper and things of this nature. And then when they're asked, they say it just flew by. 100 years just flew by. You know, that's the way it is for our lives. It just flies by. But Paul here is telling us that the present is not worthy to be compared to the eternal. You know, the things that we go through here, we can't compare them to the things that we have no imagination of. The Bible tells us that we can't imagine what God has in store for us. I want you to think for just a moment about this beautiful world that we live in. I believe the Bible is correct. It tells us that God created that in 7 days, 7 literal days. And we look at the beauty and the creation and all the things that are here that God done. And yet Jesus left and he says, I go to prepare a place for you. What can he have done in 2,000 years? If he did this in 7 days, what's he done in 2,000 years? I can't imagine. The Bible gives us glimpses in Revelation. It tells us that the things that we hold precious, they used as building materials. They put the precious stones and jewels in the foundation. They made the gates out of pearls. Each gate's a big pearl. The streets are gold. You know, I've heard Brad tell a little joke there where somebody died and went to heaven, had their suitcase with them. They walked into the heaven there and the suitcase fell open and everybody standing there just kind of looked down in awe. And then somebody finally asked, said, what in the world did you bring pavement to heaven with you for? Had a suitcase full of gold. Well, they was walking on it. They didn't need that stuff. They was walking on it. The things that we have here are just temporary. They're not worthy to be compared to the eternal that we have before us. You know, I know in my own life when I'm sick or things of this nature, Kay will say, you need to go to the doctor. And I'll say, it'll get better. It'll get better. That may be just a man thing or may just be a Gary thing. I don't know. But I'll say, it'll get better. And the truth is, it will. It will get better. The things that are here on this earth are just temporary. I've got something much better waiting for me on down the road. Something much better. When I became a Christian, I couldn't find anywhere where God had promised me a rose garden. I couldn't find it. You know, a lot of times, as I said, in this world, people will preach, you turn your life over to God and everything's going to be great. Everything's going to be perfect from there on. But that's not what God's Word teaches. That's not what God's Word tells us. We're not promised heaven on this sin-filled earth. We're not promised that, and it's not going to happen until we get to that other side. Then we're going to have everything that we've been promised. It's not going to happen here. You know, Jesus said, in this world, He said Himself, in this world you will have tribulation. So why would I think that we wouldn't? Why would I think that things are going to be easy and everything's just going to be a breeze and things are all going to be perfect? I can't think that, can I? Paul said to Timothy, they that live godly shall suffer persecution. You know, we've been told all the way through here that those things are going to happen. In 1 Peter chapter 4, it says, Beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trials which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. But rejoice, inasmuch as ye are partakers of Christ's suffering, that when His glory shall be revealed, you may be glad also with exceeding joy. If you be reproached for the name of Christ, happy are you. For the Spirit of glory and of God resteth upon you. On their part He is evil spoken of, but on your part He is glorified. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, as a thief, or as an evildoer, as a busybody in other men's matters. Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God on this behalf. You know, the Bible all the way through tells us that we're going to have trials and tribulations. Everything's going to happen to us as we go through. But things are only temporary. I want you to think for just a moment about the things that you've seen in your life that were just temporary. The things that you've seen. You know, one of the things that come to my mind that was a sort of a landmark here in this community was the Sitting Bull. You know, most everybody in the community knew where the Sitting Bull was. They'd go out there and they'd have breakfast or lunch or whatever. Me and Kay even tripped up here on occasion to eat at the Sitting Bull. You know, we like coming up here. But now it's just temporary, wasn't it? It's gone. Gone, never to be. Not in the same place anyway, because it's turned into a hardware store, I think is what I've been told. So those things will be no more. Those things are temporary. But it'll get better later. It'll get better later. When we realize that the things of God are eternal. The things of God are eternal. We focus on those things that are right in front of us sometimes. We focus on the things that are causing us problems. We focus on the hardships. We focus on the here and now a lot of times. And we forget to focus on the hereafter. What God has in store for us. We find ourselves in that place where we can look at what we see right in front of us, and that's what we focus on, ain't it? But we can see the hereafter through faith. I hope this morning that you're looking at that hereafter. You're looking at those things that are beyond, that you have that hope of what Christ has told us, that one of these days it's going to get better. One of these days we have something greater waiting on us. One of these days we're going to be in a place where there'll be no more troubles, no more trials, no more tribulations. One of these days we're going to be in a place where there's going to be no more sickness, no more death, no more crying. Now, I can't imagine that place. I can't imagine it because my whole life I have seen those things. I've seen sickness and heartache and death and troubles and tribulations, and I can't really imagine a place where there's none of that. I can't imagine a place where there's no sin. And yet that's what I've been promised. It's going to get better over there. Paul, here as he said, he says, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment. We go through a lot of trials and tribulations, but it's just for a moment. Just for a moment. You know, all these surgeries and things of that nature, we won't need those things when we get over there. We won't have to worry about having fake knees or fake hips or back surgeries or torn ligaments or any of those type of things. We won't have to worry about it because God's promised us a new glorified body, just like His. We won't have to worry about our feet hurting, will we, Greg? We won't have to worry about that stuff. That stuff will be gone. It'll be passed away. And yet I focus on this instead of what God's got in store for me. For just a moment. These things are just a moment. But worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we look not at the things which are seen, you know, these things that are seen, we got to look past those things, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. Are you focusing on those eternal things this morning? Are you focusing on those things that God has in store? God's promised us, the things that God is working on and preparing for us as we speak this morning. Are you looking at those things and thinking about those things? And have we prepared for those things? Prepared our life for those things? You see, if not, that's the first thing we have to do is prepare our life. We have to turn our heart and life over to God. Turn our life over to Jesus Christ, who died on that cross to make a way for us. And then begin to prepare for that is beyond. Looking at what God's promised. Looking at those things that are in the future. Because He's told us it'll get better. It'll get better. If you would stand with me.
Page 340. Turn your eyes upon Jesus.
Are we looking full in His face? Are we looking at those things that He's done for us? And we give everything to Him. We're focusing on the things in this world. Focusing on the things that are here. And not the things that are hereafter. You know, we need to focus on those things that are hereafter, don't we? Because these things are just temporary. One of these days they'll all go away. One of these days somebody else will enjoy them. You know, a couple of weeks ago we talked about Solomon and how Solomon was contemplating all the things and trying to figure out where he was in life, the things that really fit him. And then he realized, hey, what am I doing? You know, it doesn't matter how much money I acquire, doesn't matter how many castles I have, doesn't matter what I do, how much knowledge or whatever. One of these days I'm going to be gone. Somebody else is going to live in that castle. Somebody else is going to spend that money. Somebody else is going to take over everything that I've got. It's the same way for us. You know, when I leave this world, I hope I'll leave with some clothes on. I come in with no clothes. I hope I leave with some, but there's no guarantee of that, I guess. But all those other things, somebody else will do something with. They'll do something with it. May not be what I want, may not be what I desired, but they'll be gone. And the only thing we leave with is that relationship that we have with Jesus Christ. That's all we have. I'm hoping that each and every one of you have that relationship that you need when that time comes. Has anybody got a testimony or anything you'd like to say this morning?
Trouble at His feet. Around walking.
That's what we're supposed to do. Problem is, most of the time we pick them up and take them with us.
Put them back in our pocket.
Yeah. Any others? right then, we've got a birthday this week. Mr. Ronnie's birthday is tomorrow.